Today we're talking about U.S. Army Sergeant Major Wayne Sneeden. That's right, today we're diving into the origin and the history of G.I. Joe's Beachhead. Before we begin though, I do want to thank you whether you're returning or it's your first time here for watching JLS Comics. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. We do upload videos just like this every single week. Let's jump right into our video. In an interview, Buzz Dixon, who was attached to a great many of the cartoon episodes, was talking about Beachhead and his inspiration. And Buzz says that Beachhead was modeled after a tough-as-nails, no-nonsense gunny sergeant from the 1957 Jack Webb black and white film called the DI. DI, of course, meaning drill instructor. So he went from this inspiration to an idea to a concept and then ultimately to animation figure and comic book. As is normally the case, Beachhead's action figure debuted in 1986, which was the same year that his comic book counterpart, as written by Larry Hama, also debuted in the pages of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, a comic book published by Marvel. The action figure was cool, one of my favorites, and came with this Demro 9mm XF7A Wasp SMG, which is cool. It's a SMG that's based on the TAC-1 concept, but it's a shorter barrel, got a folding shoulder stock, and this really cool slotted metallic forend, which is different than the walnut ones that the others came on. It's got a very similar design style to, say, a Tommy gun, and actually this weapon is pretty cool for a CQB, which we'll get into that in a moment, but interesting choice for firearms. His earlier versions had a wider waist area, which was somewhat restricting his range of motion. He has a 2010 file card for the Pursuit of Cobra line that lists him as an E6 and an urban combat and CQB specialist who yields an urban plasma rail weapon. And that CQB specialty does play into his weapon of choice as well, normally, which is that Wasp. In 1995, he was released by Estrella in Brazil as part of the Esquadro de Elite, and his name was Armadilha, which means trap in Portuguese. Sneeden was born and grew up in Auburn, Alabama, to a poor family that struggled to make ends meet, but it was a multi-generational military family, living in a town that was built up after World War II on the GI Bill and the influx of students to Auburn University. There were these kids who would make fun of him in his impoverished situation, and this led to him putting all his energy and effort into his schooling, earning valedictorian of his high school. Auburn, by the way, is also the same town that the Dreadheads come from, the cousins with a Beachhead grudge. The local punks who hang out in the swamps of Alabama mentioned on Beachhead's file card. Wayne then wanted a new challenge, so he joined the Army and passed Ranger School at Fort Benning to become an Army Ranger. After a few covert missions to Central America, where he served in an observer advisor role, Wayne became a lane instructor at the U.S. Army Ranger School. Beachhead's file card lists him as a small arms armorer and a qualified expert in NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms. But let's not brush off on the lane grader role. To qualify, you have to be proficient in tactical and medical evac, assault climbing, mountaineering, as well as risk management and these things called shadow walks. So he has to have all these skills as well. And I guess this is where he developed his fondness for squatting next to a trail waiting for his ambush to snare and tango. And you can guess that comes with a lot of patience. But also Beachhead is very calm under pressure. On base, Beachhead will get up at 0500 for PT and a 10-mile run. This is all before breakfast. On the battlefield, he's known for his icy cool nerves and unwavering resolve and unrelenting patience. In fact, he'll be humming country music songs to himself in these tense conditions. Something else too I'll mention in a moment as a means of calming himself. Beachhead is one tough sumbitch and will whip other Joes into shape and knock the laziness and stupidity and incompetence out of them in a heartbeat. Beachhead will push you to your limit because it's what he expects of himself too. It makes complete sense if you consider his upbringing. Sneeden has been dealing with stress and pressure his entire life. From poverty, I almost said pottery, to bullying, to the pressures of academia. He operates well in a stressful milieu. One could say that this is when he's at his best, his most familiar. In 2010's G.I. Joe Origins 11 by IDW, we learned that Sneeden was on a mission in Central America, tasked with saving a village in Guatemala from insurgents. He was unconscious, and when he woke up, there was a doctor with him, revealed to be Duke. But he woke up face down on a beachhead, his head on the beat with amnesia, not remembering his own name. It was here that Duke offered him a spot with the G.I. Joes. He had to come up with a code name. The clinical staff referred to him as a cabeza de playa while he was unconscious, which means the very thing that Sneeden settled on, Beachhead. So as part of the G.I. Joe team, Beachhead's first appearance is in issue 47. In this issue, Hawk recruits him along with Wetsuit to rescue Snake Eyes from Cobra Island. In issue 49, he's part of the assault team that attacks Springfield. In issue 50, there's a terrorist hijacking, and Beachhead is part of the team at the Anchorage, Alaska airport. He's seen here singing the Airborne Ranger song, I told you I'd get back to another song he'd say, sneaking aboard via the wheel wells, cool under pressure. And he takes down the hijackers. In issue 53 is arm wrestling Leatherneck, and he's actually seen without his mask here for the first time. And then in issue 55, he had to rescue Snake Eyes again, who was captured in Sierra Gordo, held in a terrordrome. We see him unmasked again, but this time with white Anderson Cooper style hair. A rogue CIA operative betrayed country, so they were on a mission in Southeast Asia, and it nearly resulted in their deaths. During the Cobra Civil War, Beachhead was part of the multi-pronged G.I. Joe invasion fleet. In issue 75, he shoots a guy in the armpit, and the guy says, "Oh," to which Beachhead replies, what's an oh? I don't know, I think that's funny. In 2008, there was a comic book called The Dark Beneath the Silence, part of a Wave 6 comic pack. It saw Beachhead and Mainframe, who's now called Dataframe here due to copyrights, infiltrating Silent Castle by way of a sewer system. They intended to upload this virus into the Cobra computer system, and they do, rendering all their computers inoperable except for the ability to play commercials for Yojo Cola. And that's it. But on the mission, Beachhead was injured when Zorana dropped a bomb down a tunnel shaft. Beachhead was also field leader of the elite G.I. Joe Tiger Force. He's been Night Force, Battle Corps, all these things. In G.I. Joe Special Mission 8, he actually slipped into Southeast Asia aboard a stealth C-47 to extract a traitor named Theron Portland who stole a computer chip. They also had a kill order authorized for this special mission, and they do one of Beachhead's favorite things, trailside ambush, that's right. And so Beachhead remained with this team until decommissioning all the way up in issue 155. In non-canon run, I know it's not considered canon, but I do like to mention it as it's the first sort of re-emergence of the Joe team since the original run ended in 94. In comic book form, but this is Devil's Due, and here Beachhead is an instructor, and he does things like escort a convoy of children who are Serpentor clones and stop Storm Shadow in the assassination attempt on General Hawk. Beachhead also fought against Wraith, one of Destro's new recruits. And then back to canon with Larry Hama in IDW's issue 188, we get to see Beachhead again in the issue where the Red Shadows debut in continuity. Gung Ho and Beachhead were hit by small arms fire. It was rainy. They were on the deck of this freighter with hostages taken by the Red Shadows, and Beachhead was so bad he could barely walk. He wanted the team to leave him, but Gung Ho reminded him, we don't leave anyone behind, and they don't. Their mission completed. And so this injury must have sidelined him, or at least he went into semi-retirement. But the way the book is now is that the team's on reserve until called up to a mission for active duty with the Joes, and the title is kind of taking a focus elsewhere with Sean and Don and Revanche and all this other stuff, so he hasn't been seen in quite a while. In fact, I looked through the Death of Snake Eyes issue and I didn't even see him there. Bill Calloway voiced the animated version of Beachhead, one of the best voices on the show, which was a heavy southern drawl spoken through Beachhead's iconic balaclava. He appeared in the 1986 outfit during the Arise Serpentor Arise multi-parter that kicked off season 2 of the show, and here Flint tells Beachhead the hierarchy of the team. First comes Hawk, then Duke, then me, and finally you, he tells him, until Sergeant Slaughter, of course, comes along. In addition to wishing he held the higher rank, people like Mainframe complained about his hygiene. There are a couple scenes, like in Once Upon a Joe, for example, where Beachhead doesn't have on his sweaty wool face mask, and we can see him with this like reddish hair. Apparently his decision to not wear deodorant is a tactical decision. He was also one of the guys who was strict to regulation and rules, and so he didn't like how Snake Eyes and Flint were fraternizing with Scarlet and LJ. So even though his file card says he never gets irritable, well, he gets irritable. Sambo's Beachhead wore his 1986 outfit, sometimes with no glove. On several occasions, like computer complications and the issue I mentioned Once Upon a Joe, he was drawn without his face mask for a shot or two. So we kind of have an idea of what he looks like under the mask if we put all that together. Whereas the Sunbow series gave the character a deep South accent and a sort of gruff demeanor, the real FX Beachhead was this California surfer dude, and he wore a later version of the outfit. In G.I. Joe the movie, Beachhead's the instructor for the recruits, which are called Rawhides. He has this obstacle course set up for some of them, like Tunnel Rat, for example, complete with lasers and this concertina wire and explosives embedded in the course. In British Action Force, he hails from Auckland, New Zealand. The UK Sneeden had joined the 1st Ranger Squadron of the New Zealand Special Air Service, SAS for short, in 1963, which was prior to him joining the Action Force. One thing that I like about the Joes is when they tie to these other franchises and continuities. So there's a character named Checkpoint. There was an animated show called Cops. And in that show, Checkpoint's a descendant of Beachhead. It's set in the year 2020, and Checkpoint's name is Wayne Sneeden III. The Joes are not directly mentioned, however, it's said that his father was part of a covert military force in the 1980s and 90s. These file cards for Cops also happen to be written by none other than Larry Hama. So there you go. And that is it, my friends, for this one, all about Beachhead, one of the most famous, most popular, and coolest of the G.I. Joes. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, and go ahead and leave me some comments down below. I'd love to hear your comments, questions, questions, your corrections, and any suggestions you have as well. Anyways, I'm Jesse. This is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.